Hello, I'm Stephan Schwartz, and I welcome you to the Schwartz Report. This week, I want to talk about something that I've been hearing more and more mumbling about. You look at social media. I started about a year ago. I've been seeing more and more about states seceding from the Union. Now, I've told you before in previous episodes that we are becoming two countries in a single nation, red states and the blue states. But what I had not fully appreciated, I think, is that there are a number of red states that really want to leave the country. To my surprise, when Brookings Institute did a survey of Americans on this, they discovered that 52% of Trump voters, including Trump himself, and prominent Texans particularly, endorsed various forms of secession and wanted it to go through. And much more to my surprise, roughly 40% of Biden voters also fantasized about a national divorce. Some on the left urged a domestic breakup so that a new egalitarian nation could be constructed that was, as Lincoln said at Gettysburg, brought forth on this continent. So this idea of breaking into two countries is no longer theoretical, because in Texas is a unique situation. Texas was, for almost 10 years, from the 2nd of March, 1836, to the 19th of February, 1846, Texas was the Republic of Texas. They broke away from Mexico, and then they tried to become a state. And it took almost 10 years, the arguments, because it was an issue over whether they were going to be a slave state or a free state. They eventually became a slave state. But for 10 years, they were their own country. And when they did come in, they wrote their constitution in such a way that Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution stated that Texans, and this is a quote, have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient. So that means that the voters could choose to secede, and that it wouldn't be a matter of war or treason or conflict, that they would simply choose to leave the Union. And what's even stranger is this is about to happen. The Texas nationalist movement has put together a package, and they got 139,456 signatures to the Republican Party of Texas headquarters that called for this referendum, what they call Texit, and it's going to happen on the March 2024 ballot. And whether they can do it or not, none of it is clear. But what is clear is that they're going to try, and that it may happen. There's no other state that's has quite that history. But there are other states like Idaho, for instance, in which a large part of Idaho would like to break off and become its own state. So this issue of secession has really become an overt manifestation of the Great Schism trend, the two cultures, red and blue. I want to talk about what that actually would mean. When I look at social media, the argument is usually that the red states are, and this is a quote from one I read the other day, welfare queens who are supported by the blue states. But that isn't quite correct. Yes, there are a significant number of red states who, for every dollar they put into the federal taxes, they take out more than a dollar. They get more than a dollar. But there are also some blue states that do that. So I don't really think that's the way to do it. And more than that, if you think about it, the colonists, the founders of the United States, when they chose to revolt and rebel against England, they were terrifically dependent on England, the United Kingdom, for all sorts of things. They didn't care. And the slave states were highly dependent on the non-slave states for all kinds of things, and they didn't care. So this argument about who puts in how much and gets how much, I don't think that's the relevant argument. As I have said many times on these episodes, I don't care about the political partisanship. What I care about is well-being of individuals and families and all the other beings that are part of the matrix of consciousness on Earth. So let's look at it just from that point of view at a very personal level. So let's start with states that have the best and worst health care. So here on this slide, you can see here are the states with the worst health care. And what do you notice? They're all red states. So if they were to secede, you think their health care would get better? Or would it get even worse? If you live in a red state, you already get very poor health care. So what would happen if your state were to secede? Here are the states with the best health care. What do you notice? Except for a couple of exceptions, they're all blue states. So this secession argument that goes on, I want people to be clear that when you're talking about secession, you're talking about the well-being of individuals and families, not some abstraction. I want to keep this whole thing at the level of something you personally might experience. So let's look at maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. These are the worst states. This is a woman goes in to deliver a child and she doesn't make it. She dies. And these are the worst maternal death states in the country. And what do you notice? With a couple of exceptions, they're all red states. Once again, let's look at infant deaths. If you look at infant deaths per 100,000 live births, that is, the child is born, but doesn't make it. And what do you see again? All the worst infant deaths per 100,000 live births, they're all red states. So both mother and child have a less of an opportunity, a less of a chance to survive birth if you're in a red state than if you're in a blue state. And as we know, post-Dobbs, a woman who is pregnant, who has some problem, even when she wants to have children, as this story in Texas has just played out, even then, she can't get an abortion. And increasingly, in many rural areas, she can't even find an OBGYN in a red state because they've left because they're afraid that if they make the wrong decision, they'll lose their medical license or they'll be put in jail or fined. So if you're a woman, a pregnant woman, or a woman with any kind of gynecological problem, and you live in a red state, your chances of successful healing or even living are significantly worse than if you're in a blue state. And it's even worse than that. Look at the maternal mortality rate of the United States compared with other developed nations in Europe, in the Nordic countries. The United States, by orders of magnitude, has a higher maternal death rate per 100,000 live births than any other country. 17.4 maternal deaths per 100,000, where Norway has 1.8. The Netherlands has 3. So if we're talking about secession, we're talking about the situation for women getting significantly worse, because being poor, if you live in one of the red states, particularly, that depends on federal money to make up its budget. About a third of Texas budgets, by the way, is federal money that they get, which is greater than what they put in. So it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And it's going to get potentially much worse. Let's look at some other things. The 10 most educated states with the highest income. What do you see? They're almost all, well, except for Virginia, which has gone both ways, they're all blue states. Why is it that people who live in the culture of blue states are more educated and have higher incomes than the people in red states? Look at this. These are the 10 least educated states with the lowest income. What do you see? They're all red states and a couple of swing states. So already today, if you live in a blue state, you're much more likely to be better educated, to have gone to better schools, and to be making more money than if you live in a red state, where you are less likely to be well educated and to be much poorer. Now, why is that? Is there some law that says that if you live in a red state, you have to be poorly educated and poor? Or is it a choice of the culture? Again, as I've said, I am focusing on well-being. That's what I care about. And I think that's what you should care about. And when we look at it in this way, what we see is that Republican governance at the individual personal level is always inferior by choice. It doesn't have to be that way. They could make different laws and resolve the problem, but they don't. Let's look at some others. Here are the 10 states with the highest rate of obesity. Obesity is a huge problem in the United States. If you ever go out of the country, you can always tell the Americans because of their obesity. No other country looks like that. It has to do with the foods they choose to eat, exercise, all kinds of little life patterns. It's about culture. It's not about laws. Nobody says there's a law that you have to be obese. You become obese because you're not eating the right stuff, pre-prepared foods, for instance, fast foods, or you're not exercising as you should. But the 10 states with the highest rate of obesity are all red states. And in contrast, look at the 10 states with the lowest rate of obesity. What do you see? Every one of them's a blue state. Now, why is that true? Why do people who live in blue states be less obese? Why are they healthier than people in red states? It's about choices that individuals make and the way that collective individual choices create the culture of that state. Why can't red states do better? Is there a law that says they have to be inferior? I don't think so. This is about the way the governance of the state is carried out. This is about how the education is carried out. This is about how the healthcare is carried out. The red states are just as capable of producing good results as the blue states, and they choose not to do it. And if there were to be secession, as this March ballot is going to determine in Texas, then it's only going to get worse. Because when the red states became separate countries, what would happen? They'd become sort of third world countries like Central America. Is that what you want? Is that what you are voting for? To be a third world country? And yet, as I say, and as I'm showing you, and this is all factual information, as I have told you many times, at the end of every episode, I post the references from whence I got this information, and you can go and read more deeply about it. You can see how I got to these numbers, these slides. It is a choice that we are making in the states at the individual level and collectively by the people we vote into office and the kind of governments that they put together. Here's another one. The red states seem to be obsessed with sexual issues, transsexuals, gay people, LGBTQ people, whatever. They're just obsessed with it. And they place it all in an issue of morality. And yet, here are the states with the highest out of wedlock births. What do you see? Red states, with one exception, a couple of swing states, red states have a higher rate of out of wedlock birth than the blue states. That's an individual choice. Nobody said to a woman, you have to have your child out of wedlock. Why are they not children being delivered within the context of marriage? These women are pregnant. They carry to term children. Why are they being born out of wedlock? I think that's an important question to ask. What is it in the culture of the red states? This is all about culture. And culture is created by the collective individual choices people make and by the people they vote for to govern them and the policies that they create. Here's the states with the lowest out of wedlock births. What do you see? It's a mix, but mostly blue. In the red states, they make a huge deal about marriage, faithfulness, all of that. Well, here are the states with the highest divorce rate. Highest divorce rate. What do you see? They're mostly red states. How is it that they talk morality, but they don't live morality? What is going on in these red states that they make the choices they make, and they get these kind of results. This is a question of culture, not a question of law. It has to do with the culture and the government policies that represent that culture by individual choice, the way people vote. Here are the 10 states with the lowest divorce rate. These are the blue states. They tolerate LGBTQ, they tolerate and engage and embrace people of all gender persuasions. They have fewer out of wedlock children, and when they get married, they stay married. In contrast to the red states that make a huge deal out of morality but don't live it. The only thing that's going to change any of this is if you, as an individual, decide that you are going to make choices that support well-being. As I have said again and again, every day you make dozens of choices, little bitty choices, you don't even think of them. The kind of things you buy, the organizations you belong to, the media you listen to or read. Does it foster well-being, or does it sabotage well-being? This is a choice we each get to make. It has nothing to do with grandiose policy issues. It's not these big abstract things that people talk about. This is down at the individual level, your level. And the question is, are you choosing through all the little choices that you make each day, what I call quotidian choices, are you choosing choices that are compassionate, life-affirming, and fostering of well-being? Or are you coming out of grievance or fear or resentment? The United States, it's clear from this secession business, stands at a crossroads. And as early as this March, we're going to see what happens in Texas. And that's going to prompt other states. So I urge you, sit down, talk with your family, make the decision to be an agent of change that fosters well-being. Thank you. As I keep telling you, Schwartz Report is based on facts, and I'm not making that up. At the end of every episode, you can go and check the research that I used to create this podcast. I provide it every week, and I encourage you to go and dig deeper. You will find the link at the end of the episode, and it will allow you to be able to check everything I'm saying, and it will allow you to become the kind of citizen we need to support democracy.